Hello and welcome to the Fort Detrick Business Development Office webinar series. Today's session is How to Speak the Proposal Language. It will be taught by Elly Zupko, Senior Proposal Manager at Beacon Associates. My name is Gloria Larkin. I am President of Target Gov and very happy to be presenting this to you in conjunction with the Fort Detrick Business Development Office. Before we get started, we have a few webinar notes to share with you so that today's session runs smoothly. We have made this session very easy for you to access simply by clicking on the link which brought you to the screen that you see in front of you. However, we do want to be able to answer questions for you today. You can email your questions into us whenever you have them during the session or after. And if you are listening to the session as a recording, you can send your questions in 24/7. We will respond to them and make sure that you get the answers to all of your questions. You will see on the bottom of every screen the email address to use to send in your questions. It is ask@fdbdo.com. If you have any problems at all during the webinar, please call our office number at 301-620-7071. And as I mentioned, we are recording today's session to make it available to you for future access 24/7. You can share it with your colleagues, your business associates, your employees, anyone that you think will benefit by learning how to speak the proposal language. I'd like to welcome a very distinguished guest with us today. Actually, one of our hosts. He is Steve Lamberson, Business Development Specialist at the Fort Detrick Business Development Office. Steve, thank you very much for hosting today's session. What can you tell us is happening at the Fort Detrick Business Development Office?
Yeah, well, hi, Gloria. I'd like to say thanks to Elly for making this presentation on proposal writing possible. So we're looking forward to that. And towards the end of this webinar, I'll be adding a few feature benefits about the Fort Detrick Business Development Office. And also I'll share some information on some future training webinars that we have coming up on our schedule.
Very good. We'll look forward to that. And speaking of Elly, let me tell you a little bit about Elly's background. She is a writing and editing expert with 9 years of experience, 6 of which she has written for federal government audiences. She is an association of proposal management professionals and an accredited proposal manager, and she has been leading proposal efforts at Beacon Associates for over 5 years, from small task orders to proposals for contracts worth over $200 million. Let me tell you a success story. She managed and co-wrote a $25 million support services proposal that when Beacon Associates won it, doubled the size of Beacon in a single proposal. She has 12 years of experience in professional writing, marketing, and desktop publishing. We're very excited, Elly, that you could be here today and share with us how to speak the proposal writing language. I'd like to turn today's session over to you.
Great. Thanks, Gloria, and thanks, Steve, for that warm welcome. I'm so pleased to have been invited back by Target Gov and FDBDO. I did present several months ago a webinar called Proposal Writing 101, where we went over the basics of going from an RFP to a compliant proposal. So I'm really glad to be back so that we can delve into more of the nuanced angles of writing proposals for the federal government. Writing is the part of proposal production that is really the most intimidating to people who are new to this. They often think I'm not a writer. How on earth am I going to get from a blank sheet of paper to a final proposal, let alone a proposal that's going to beat out the competition who are probably more experienced than me or have more information than me? How am I going to write a winning proposal? But you really don't have to be a writer to create a document that can sell your company and bring winning solutions to the government. As I shared in my last webinar, you just have to have conviction about your solution. You have to be convinced that you are offering the best solution to the government. You have to have analytical thinking skills so that you know when things don't smell right in your proposal. And you have to have the ability to follow directions, because in order to bring your proposal to the next stage, it needs to be compliant with the RFP instructions. Make sure you follow the government's directions. And that's really all you need to be a good proposal writer. Evaluators on the source selection boards, they don't read the proposals. They evaluate. They have score sheets and checklists, and they're looking for certain information in your proposal in order to give you a score, which is what's ultimately going to rank you to see whether or not you're going to win that bid. So you want to focus less on being a writer and more on creating a document that makes evaluation easy. So why we're here today, for writers and non-writers alike, the objective for today's training is to make the writing part painless. We're going to learn ways to plan your content efficiently so that the writing starts sooner. Learn how to maximize your evaluation score through adding win themes to your sections. And then learn what words work best in a proposal and what words to avoid. Okay? So we're going to jump right into planning your content. Some of this information is review from the last webinar that I did, but I know not everyone was able to attend that. And I also believe it's a really important part of the proposal process is the planning. Up to 25% of the proposal cycle can be spent on planning the content before you even actually start writing. You can't discount this as a really important part of the process. So the compliance matrix is a great way to organize your response for a very long RFP or a complicated proposal response. Some RFPs even require a compliance matrix to be submitted as part of your proposal. Now in some cases it might be an unnecessary step to do the compliance matrix, but if you're just starting out with proposals, this is a really helpful tool. It ensures that you're not missing anything, and it creates an automatic checklist to be sure that everything that's supposed to be in your proposal ultimately ends up in there. Now, across the top of this matrix, you're going to list the proposal section number and then the section title. Then you're going to put the numbers from the RFP sections of L, M, and C. Now that, in other words, that's the proposal instructions, the evaluation criteria, and the statement of work, L, M, and C. And you can add as many columns to this matrix as you need to. You can add columns and then paste in the actual text from the RFP. You can assign page limits. You can assign the author. You can put in notes. Any information that you think you'll need for putting your proposal together, you can go put it right in this matrix and have the handiest tool possible. Then you'll go down row by row following section L, or the proposal instructions. So again, this provides you with an easy way to keep track of and follow the government's instructions. If the RFP is pretty simple and straightforward, you can usually skip the compliance matrix and go right to the content plan, which we're going to talk about next. Now, it's not important that you're able to read what's on this content plan, but it does show you that it's a planning tool, and you can use different elements like color coding to combine the proposal elements that you need to write to. So using your compliance matrix or using the RFP, you can create the content plan. You'll start with the document template that your final proposal is going to go into. So the headings will have the same font, the body text will have the same font. This allows you to figure out easily whether you're within page count and what your document's going to look like when it's complete. Then you'll add the numbers and headings from section L or from your compliance matrix. You'll add the evaluation criteria at the top of each section, and this will help focus you. Add the instructions from section L to the appropriate section, and then add the relevant portions of section C, or the statement of work, so that you talk to the right topics. Then you can write to each of these instructions by replacing the instructions with your response. So writing actually becomes a process of elimination. When you take out the colored portions of language and replace them with black text, you know you've completed that instruction. So in this sample page, you can see in the blue font, this is where I've put the page limit for the section and some recommendations to the writer about what should go there. if you're creating this for yourself, you can put your own instructions to yourself in there. And the red font is instructions from the RFP as well as the evaluation criteria. And down at the bottom, I actually put in a table that I can fill out, and this table can replace the text. So although today's webinar is not about graphics, it's about writing, it's important to note that evaluators love graphics. And any information that can be presented graphically instead of in words, it should be a graphic. It just makes it easier for your evaluator to get through. So now I want to talk a little bit about the POWER method. The POWER method is a helpful tool for creating a first draft. This is something that students are taught in elementary school and up to the college level and beyond. It's a very simple method, but it's effective because it's simple. It allows you to go from having a blank sheet of paper to actually having a plan to get your writing done. And the more planning you can do, the easier your writing will seem to be and will actually be. So the P and the O, the plan and organize, these are taken care of in the documents I just talked about. But I think I really can't emphasize enough that planning is super important. So we're going to talk about just a few more methods for planning before you actually start writing. Storyboards are a very formal way to plan content. These are usually reserved for very large proposal efforts or efforts that have a lot of writers involved. The storyboard is a form with spaces for all the information you're going to need to create a proposal section. It will have the instructions from the RFP, win themes, graphics, etc. You would use this before or instead of a content plan. Typically, your proposal manager is going to create the storyboards for you, and then you as the writer will fill it out. Now, once everything in this form is filled out, you're going to have one document that has all the information you need to write a compliant and compelling proposal section. You have all that information at your fingertips, and all you have to do is turn these notes into sentences. Now, another method for planning is, let me just get to the slide, mind mapping or clustering. This is a much more informal method of planning or brainstorming. Mind mapping or clustering is a way to visually organize all your thoughts. Say you have to write a little paragraph about the program manager, but you just don't know where to start. So you write the word program manager in a bubble and let your brain go where it goes. Oh, he has 18 years of experience, so write that down. You know he's PMP certified, write that down. Oh, he was the PM on the previous contract. That's pretty important, so you write that down. And these are all connecting back to your program management bubble. Now, when you start thinking about that he was PM on the previous contract, that leads you to think, oh, he's got a lot of institutional knowledge. He's going to bring continuity of operations to this contract. So those two ideas connect to the theme of low risk. So there you've created a pattern of ideas that led you to a win theme that's a benefit to the customer. If you go with our program manager, it's going to be lower risk for you because he will help ensure continuity of operations and brings institutional knowledge about the contract. So then you just take these ideas that you've planned out and turn them into sentences, and you have a paragraph. Okay, one more method of planning I call additive building. This is the way I personally write, and I'm a huge advocate of it because I think it's really the fastest, most efficient way to get from your outline to a final section. The mind mapping and the storyboards are really great, but they do represent additional steps in the writing process. So you might not always have the time when you're working on a quick turnaround proposal. So with additive building, you're starting with your content plan or your outline, which is your armature or your skeleton. It's what's underneath, and you're going to be building on top of that. So you're going to start fleshing out ideas. Put some notes here, put an idea for a graphic over there, put a win theme over there, and you continue to add and build until each of your sections has enough substance to start writing sentences. Like I said, I like this method because I think it's the fastest. You're putting ideas right into the template that you're going to be writing in, so you're not doubling your work. It also allows you to jump around from section to section as ideas occur to you. You could even take a sheet of paper and jot down every idea that you want to put in the proposal, and then go to your outline and just start putting those bullets in where they belong in the individual sections. Then you'll have all the different types of notes that you need all in one place and all in the place where they need to end up. So it's really an efficient way to just start building up until you have a final proposal. So this checklist it's a review from the last webinar, but it's worth stating again. This is a simple proposal formula, and it will always help you when you're stuck. Think like a journalist and ask yourself who, what, where, when, how, and why. The why is the most important, so let's get into that. Maximizing your score. The only way to win a proposal is to have the highest evaluation score combined with the best value price. So you want to give your evaluators lots of ways to give you high marks. So we'll talk about some ways that you can very simply and easily draw your evaluators' attention to the most important aspects of your proposal. So we're going to start by stepping back and thinking about what we need to know about the customer in order to create effective win themes. The RFP tells you explicitly what the customer wants. Explicit needs are what the customer just comes right out and says. This is helpful, but it won't give you a jump on the competition because everyone is working from the same sheet of music. They all have the statement of work that contains the requirements for the product or the solution. They all have Section M, which contains the evaluation criteria or what's important to the customer. So what's really important are implicit requirements. Implicit requirements are where you can really show your company's value. So think about what keeps the customer up at night. If you ran into them in the cafeteria on a bad day, what would they be complaining about? Also think about language and writing style. For instance, a DoD organization might warrant a more formal tone. Other organizations might prefer plain, simple language. You have to know what's important to your customer and talk to it. If you write from their perspective, they'll be more likely to hear what you're saying. So these hot buttons and pain points are really crucial to writing words that will echo loudly in your customer's ears. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Your customer's hot button, or what keeps them up at night, that's a need that they have. So you need to provide them with features that will fill that need. We'll talk about features and benefits in just a few minutes, but this is a graphic that shows how win themes really work. The hot button represents a customer's need. Your feature fills that need and creates a benefit to the customer. And then you need to substantiate how that customer will realize the benefit. So those three elements together create the win theme. The feature, the benefit, and the proof become a theme statement. So let's get a little more into that so we can show you how to create your own. The feature of your solution, these are characteristics, elements, or traits of your solution that satisfy or exceed requirements in the RFP or unstated requirements. These are your tools, your methodologies, your processes, your people. These are tangible things that you're offering to the government. Now the benefit, these are the advantages of the feature that typically solve the customer problems or address customer hot buttons. This could be increased efficiency, reduced cost, reduced risk, etc. The benefit is the intangible advantage of the feature. This is the why. This is the so what. Why should it matter to the customer? It should always go back to the benefit. So here is a little example to get you into the benefits mindset. Just a simple utility, the refrigerator. The feature of the refrigerator, or the thing that it does, is that it keeps things cold. But that's not really what's important to people. People don't get a refrigerator because it keeps things cold. People get a refrigerator because of the benefits. Benefits include the cost savings. Your food lasts longer, so you don't have to buy it as often. Safety. Bacteria doesn't grow as fast, and this hopefully prevents food poisoning. And increased enjoyment. People like cold sodas more because they're more refreshing. So the bottom line is that you can save money, get sick less often, and enjoy beverages more if you have a refrigerator. You wouldn't say you can keep things cold if you have a refrigerator. That sort of goes without saying. So you really want to focus on the benefits that your customer is going to get from your solution. Okay, so now that we have our features and benefits, let's use them to create a win theme. So here's a really weak theme. I wouldn't even call it a theme. This is something that should not ever be in your proposal. Our widget will increase your efficiency of operations. That's vague, it's unsubstantiated, and it talks about you before it talks about the customer. So that is not customer-focused. That is not a benefit. It's just weak. So how can we make this stronger? You can increase the efficiency of your Gizmo development process by implementing our widget, which saved company ABC 1 hour for every 4 hours of development time. This is much better because it's specific. It talks about exactly what benefit the government can expect. It's substantiated with proof. We showed an example with real-world statistics. And it's focused on the customer by putting the benefit first. It also puts the customer first by using the word you at the front. Notice that your company name does not even appear in this sentence. Okay, so this table is a very simple tool that allows you to build win themes using the information we just talked about. So first, you'll fill in the need, or the customer hot button, or the requirement from the RFP. Then jump over to the third column and fill in the feature that is part of your solution that answers that customer need. Then go back in between and fill in the benefit that the customer can expect from that feature. And then finally, you're going to insert your proof. This could be a statistic or an anecdotal story or a customer quote. Whenever you can substantiate a claim with proof, it's going to make your claim that much stronger. Then you put these 4 elements together and you have a win theme. You can use win themes typically by putting them at the top of a proposal section, and you'll highlight it or bold it. You want to draw attention to it. It's got the most impressive information of your solution. So if the evaluator is only skimming your page, you want their eyes to go right to this win theme where you have your feature, your benefit, and your substantiation. I'll round out this segment with the so what factor. When you're writing, you should always be asking yourself, so what? I promise you that is what the evaluator is asking himself. So what? I have all this writing to wade through. Why should I care? Get to the meat. Get to what's important. So here are some questions to keep beside you as you write. Don't waste your evaluator's time by blabbing on with text that doesn't answer any of these questions. Always be thinking, what point are we trying to make? Why should the customer be impressed? What aspect of our approach makes it worth buying? Remember that the customer is spending money on you. Why is it worth buying? What do we offer that is different from the competition? Why can't they go somewhere else to get the same solution? What makes our offer unique, desirable, beneficial? Always focus on that benefit. Why should the customer choose us over the competition? I think that's probably the most important question of this list. Remember that you're not in this alone. Not only do you have to convince the customer that you have what they need, but that it's better than all of the competition. Okay, so now we're going to move into the last segment of this webinar, which is getting the words right. Now you know how to start writing, and you know how to make your story resonate with through using targeted win themes. So now we'll delve into the details a little more to make your writing stronger. Remember, the goal is always to make the evaluator's job easier. Make it easier for them to get through the proposal. Make it easier for them to see why you are the best choice. Make their decision easy for them. That's what you want to do to win your proposal. So today I'm going to focus on 4 elements of writing persuasively in a proposal. It's writing with customer focus, using active voice over passive voice, use positive language over negative language, and write for your readers, not against them. So let's delve into these in a little more detail. Contrary to popular belief, the proposal is not about you. It's not about your company. It's not about when you were founded or how long you've been in business or how many people you have. It's not about you. A proposal is about your customer. You need to be writing it from their perspective. You need to put yourself in their shoes and in their mindset and ask yourself, what would I want to see in a proposal? They probably don't care what year your company was founded. They care about the benefits, the value that you are bringing to them. If it doesn't matter to them, it doesn't matter in the proposal. So some of the ways you can achieve customer focus include focusing on benefits, putting their name first, and mentioning them and their name more than you mention yourself and your company name. I've heard advice to use a 3-to-1 ratio, meaning that you talk about them 3 times as much as you talk about yourself, or use their name 3 times as many times as you use your own name. And I think that's a good rule that will really help you be sure that you are focusing on the customer. So let's look at an example of this in the real world. So this is just okay. Team ABC's software gives you real-time access to status reports and statistics. It's okay. It's ho-hum. It gives you some information, but it really doesn't have the so what factor. This is stronger. You will have real-time access to status reports and statistics with Team ABC software. That's improved because you've put the customer first, but you're still focusing on the features instead of the benefits. So the strongest example, you can make faster, better informed decisions by leveraging the real-time status reports and statistics available through Team ABC software. So there you start with the customer first and the benefit first before you get to the features and before you get to your company's name. So that could be a win theme if you added a piece of proof to it, and then you could put that at the beginning of your proposal section. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about is active voice. This is getting a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of grammar and more of the writerly stuff, but it's still important to point this out. Passive voice is a sentence construction that makes the object of an action into the subject of a sentence. This is an example. The proposal was lost by your company, instead of saying you lost the proposal. Passive voice conveys a lack of confidence. It makes you sound like you don't really care about what you're talking about. And this is interesting. It actually decreases readability. People who have English as a second language misunderstand passive voice a lot more often than they misunderstand active voice. Active voice, on the other hand, is clear. It's active by its very name. It exudes energy, it exudes confidence and firmness. Your company won the proposal. So let's look at an example of active voice in action. So here's our ho-hum statement. Retention can be improved by offering our robust benefits package. It's okay, but it's passive voice. Stronger, we turn it into active voice. Our robust benefits package can improve retention. Now here's the strongest. Improve retention with our robust benefits package. This is strongest because it puts the benefit first. Always focus on the benefits. Okay? Now our third principle of writing persuasively is positive over negative writing. A negative tone can convey a negative attitude, and this can lead to a negative evaluation. So you want to avoid obvious forms of negativity. Don't point out problems with the RFP or the statement of work. You can ask clarification questions, but really avoid calling the customer stupid. You want to avoid showing lack of confidence. Flimsy words like maybe or possible, perhaps, these don't have a place in your proposal. You want to use strong words like will, definitely, absolutely. I do have to caveat this by saying you have to remember that proposals are legally binding. So be careful using words like guarantee or 100% of the time. Be sure that you can back up your claims and stand by them. Okay, more forms of negativity. Demeaning the competition. You probably have heard about ghosting at this point. Ghosting is typically done by comparing yourself to a competitor and making yourself look more favorable. But you never want to come right out and say bad things about your competition. It's in poor taste, and it will leave a bad taste in the evaluator's mouth. And finally, you don't want to complain, blame, or whine. If you have had problems in the past, such as in a past performance example that you're citing, don't hide from them and don't blame someone else for them. Own up to your problems, but focus on the positive. Talk about how you overcame them. Talk about the solutions that you brought to the government. And talk about how you made it all better. But certainly don't point any fingers in your writing. So I also want to talk about some more subtle forms of negativity. To me, this is really interesting because a lot of writers tend to use negative words and they don't even think about it. Now, this is really important because, as I've said time and time again, evaluators are not reading your proposal. They're evaluating it. So it's entirely possible that they're going to skim your proposal. They're just going to pick out keywords and see certain claims and not everything. So when your readers skim, you don't want them picking up on negative words like your organization never. You don't have to worry about, don't waste time with. Now, any of these could be the beginning of a very positive sentence, but these negative words can stand out and resonate in your evaluator's ears. So you always want to write positively, and your message will read positively. Use words such as always, rest assured, or save time. This will really go to improve your writing, make it more active, and leave just a better overall feeling in your evaluator when he or she is done reading your proposal. So finally, just a few tips on writing for your reader. Evaluators have a lot of reading to do. You want to make it as easy on them as possible. Try to keep your sentences short, 20 words or less. It may sound stilted when you're looking at it. You may think that longer sentences sound fancier or read more nicely, but really you're just creating strain on your evaluator. Keep your sentences short, active, and declarative. Also use short, simple words. Don't say utilize if you can say use. Use the simplest word that conveys the correct meaning. Keep your sentences to 3 to 5, or keep your paragraphs to 3 to 5 sentences. Make sure that you're breaking up your paragraphs every couple sentences so that you're creating white space. You're creating visual breaks so that your evaluator can take a mental break when he or she is reading. White space is your friend. Anything that you can break up is going to be better. Your evaluator is really going to enjoy reading a proposal that looks more like a magazine than looks like a technical report. Okay, focus on the benefit by leading paragraphs with a win theme, like we discussed before. Use headings to guide the evaluator and break up the text. Headings should come directly from your RFP or be similar so that the evaluator can easily find what they're looking for. Break long passages into bullets or numbered lists. Remember that pictures are worth 1,000 words. Anything that can be turned into a graphic should be turned into a graphic. They do take up a lot of room, but a picture really is worth 1,000 words. Use text boxes to call out key points. You want to use principles of graphic design to guide your reader's eye around the page. So envision that you have a blue text box in the upper right-hand corner of your proposal. Then in the middle of the page you have a blue heading. And then towards the bottom of the page you have a graphic that has blue tones in it. So your evaluator's eye is going to go right to those colors on your page, and those are the most important bits of information they're going to pick up. So use that tool to your advantage. Your evaluator is not going to want to spend a time with a proposal where the words are 9-point font condensed with as many crammed onto a page as possible. You may feel like you're saying more, but your evaluator is probably reading less of what you've put in there. So take advantage of white space, take advantage of graphics, take advantage of headings and any other excuse you have to break up your text. And you're just making your evaluator's job easier, and they will thank you for it with a higher evaluation score. So that brings me to the end of what I wanted to talk about today. I think now we're going to take some questions, and I'll hand this back to Gloria.
That would be terrific. You know, I was busy taking many notes while you were going through your sections. You make it sound so easy because I know you've been doing this for years, and it does sound logical and relatively straightforward, but if it's anything, it's not easy. So we really appreciate your expertise coming through today and helping us write our proposals so that they have a better chance of winning. We have been receiving questions in. Steve, I know that you've got a number of them. Would you like to start, please?
Yes, happy to. And Elly, outstanding training content once again. So really appreciate your
Thank you
participation.
Very much.
All right. Yeah, I got a one question came in from Rachita. And she asks, how important is it to have graphics in your proposal?
Okay, that's a great question. I did touch on this a little bit, but I didn't really dive too deep. I'm not a graphics expert, but I've picked up a little here and there. I would say it is 100% essential to have graphics in your proposal, especially the longer proposals. You don't want pages and pages of text. It's just absolutely exhausting to get through all of that on the evaluator's end. So anything that's a process or an organization chart or a diagram, it's going to come across much more clearer in a graphic. It's easier for an evaluator to take in a lot more information that way. It's a way to make complex ideas appear much more simplified. It's hard sometimes to make the choice to use a graphic because it takes up so much proposal real estate in what could be a page-limited proposal. But you really have the ability to convey a lot more information in the same amount of space by using a graphic. And there are programs out there, like I make most of my graphics using PowerPoint. You don't have to get fancy. And in fact, a lot of RFPs tell you don't do fancy artwork, but that doesn't mean they don't want any artwork. Just keep things simple and clear and to the point, just like all other aspects of your proposal. But you can make really great graphics in a program like PowerPoint or Word. that'll really help you tell your story. So I would say that they're not just important, but they're absolutely essential.
Good. Good. A second question I have comes from Aaron. His question is, it begins with a sentence, some RFPs have really restrictive page limits. What do you do if there isn't enough room to say what needs to be said?
That's a really interesting question, and I think a lot of proposal writers feel that way. They're told, oh, you have 2 pages for this section, and you don't think there's any way that could be enough. And the way that question was phrased was, what needs to be said? And I think if you have that question, you're probably still stuck in your own frame of mind rather than thinking of things from the customer's perspective. So don't think about what you think needs to be said. Think about what the customer needs to hear to make their decision. What information do they need in order to make a decision? And you'll probably find that you have more room than you think you do. Don't be afraid of white space. Don't feel like you have to fill every square inch of your proposal with words. If you really choose your words carefully, focusing on the benefits of your solution, you can say a lot more with a lot less. And like I said before, the more words you have in your proposal, the less likely they'll all be read. But if you have lots of bulleted lists and graphics and headings, little bites of information make it a lot easier for your evaluator to digest. So just try to condense your thoughts, stick on point, and ask yourself the question, so what, for everything you write, and you'll find that you need to put in a lot fewer words than you probably thought.
Okay. I have another question that came in from Anthony. Question is, what's a good way to organize individual sections or paragraphs?
That's a really interesting question. I didn't really get down to that level of detail in my presentation, so let me see if I can tackle that. If you have any experience with journalism or reading the newspaper, you know that they start by putting the most important information at the top, and then the information decreases in importance as you go down. And that's in case the end of the article gets cut off due to space restrictions. So I think that same principle applies in writing proposals. Start with what is most important, and then go to the pieces of information that are in decreasing levels of importance. And that's because your evaluator is more likely to read the beginning of the paragraph than to read it all the way through to the end. Again, put your win theme at the top to focus them, and then your next most important piece of information, and then your next most important piece of information. A lot of writers tend to build to a big finish. They'll put the most important piece of information as the last sentence, as sort of a climax to their proposal. That is not what you want to do in a proposal. You want to start out with the most important points and hit them really hard and highlight them somehow. And then, like I said, go in decreasing order of importance and cut off anything that's not important to your customer. If anything is not providing a benefit to them, it doesn't even belong in the proposal. So hopefully that's a little helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I do have one more, Gloria, if that's okay.
Okay. Sure. Actually, we've got a couple here as well.
Okay. One more from Sheila. Are you sure it isn't too informal to use bullets and lists?
Oh, yeah. I'm a huge advocate of those. I mean, you don't want to write your whole proposal that informally, but anything that you can bullet point out, it just makes it easier. Like I said, little bites of information. It's just easier for a brain to comprehend. One example that I like to use are personnel bios. A lot of proposals have little paragraphs that are about the key personnel for a solution. And people typically write those as paragraphs. But that's a big block of solid text that can be hard to get through. It might only be 150 words, but as a solid block of text, you might not be digesting all that information. If you can break that out into bullets, the years of experience, the certifications, the really most important parts of that person's bio, it makes it a lot easier for the evaluator to comprehend that information. So no, I don't think it's too informal, and I highly recommend using it to add white space and break up your proposal text.
Well, I can certainly understand why you write winning proposals. You have some fabulous advice to share. We have a few other questions that have come in. Elliot asks about the compliance matrix. Is this complying to the FAR regs, or what exactly do you mean?
That's a good question. People get intimidated by the FAR. The compliance matrix actually doesn't have anything to do with the FAR. Compliance matrix in the context of a proposal means that you are complying with the requirements of the RFP itself. Now, the RFP might have clauses from the FAR in it. They may have clauses in by reference only. This will be typically, I think, Section H of the RFP will have the FAR references. But you don't really need to think about the FAR. You just need to think about what's in the actual RFP document and make sure that you comb through that and that all requirements that are in the RFP are making their way into the compliance matrix. So it's not about compliance from a legal standpoint, but it is about complying with, it's about following directions on a very basic level.
Would those compliance statements be in a special section of the RFP, or are they throughout the whole RFP?
You always want at least one person in your organization to read the entire RFP. That's typically going to be your proposal manager and or your capture manager. As a proposal writer, the sections that you need to focus on are Section C, which is the statement of work, Section L, which is the proposal instructions, and Section M, which are the evaluation criteria. Typically, Section L is going to have all the requirements. This is what you have to do section. You may find other requirements hidden in other sections of the proposal, such as Section H often has contractual requirements. So it's always the best practice to read the RFP from beginning to end, read all the documents. But if you're stretched for time, you're going to find most of the requirements in that Section L.
That's an excellent point, definitely. And Mike has asked, what if I have a better idea that adds something different to what the statement of work asks for, but it saves time and money?
Boy, so you're going down the road of alternate proposals, and I do have to say I don't have quite as much experience with that. Typically, the RFP will state whether or not alternate proposals are accepted, and alternate proposals can be defined as a proposal that deviates from the requirements of the RFP. So in some cases, the government does accept those, and if you think you can save the government time and money, that's probably something they're going to want to see. But I would say you really need to use your knowledge about the customer to understand whether that's something that they would want to see. It goes back to the explicit and the implicit requirements that we talked about earlier. So you have to first of all make sure you're following the explicit requirements of the RFP, whether or not they're accepting alternate proposals. And then you have to have a true understanding of the implicit requirements of the government, whether they would be amenable to those alternate solutions. So it's hard to say. I would really treat that on a case-by-case basis. But that's the kind of information you're going to want to gather before the RFP even drops in your meetings with customers, where you can sort of vet alternate ideas that they might be amenable to.
Right. I was gonna add to that, and you just mentioned that, Elly, is that you can contact the contract officer and ask specific information, and that would be a great question directly for the contract officers to see if they would approve or consider alternative proposals.
Very good. And Donna says, we are a creative company. Can we use our own style, graphics, layout, special paper to make us look different?
That's a really terrific question. And it's something that people go back and forth on in the proposal industry. Some people are real advocates of consistency, and some people are advocates of standing out from the crowd. I think that you really want to strike a balance. The way we do proposals at Beacon is, for our typical marketing materials, we do have a company brand that we follow. But for proposals, we try to make the proposal document look like a document that is at home in the client's, on the client's desk. So we use a lot of red, white, and blue. We integrate elements of the customer's logo. We really want the proposal to look like part of their organization rather than our organization. But that's a decision that each company needs to make. It may not be appropriate for every proposal. But making your proposal stand out, as long as it's in a good way, I'm all for that. A lot of companies like to use thicker stock paper or maybe a tan paper instead of a white paper. As long as you're following the instructions of the RFP and you're using the fonts that they dictate and staying within the margins that they dictate and binding it in the way that they want to see it bound, I think you have some creative latitude. You just want to present yourself professionally. And again, it goes back to the understanding the customer and understanding what they're going to be pleased to see or understanding what they're going to be annoyed to see.
Elly, you've really done a fabulous job with your prepared presentation as well as the off-the-cuff Q&A section, and I know that we'll have other questions coming in. Remember, whenever you're listening to the webinar, you can send your questions in 24/7 to ask@fdbdo.com. That email is at the bottom of the screen that you see now on the computer. Elly, we want to thank you. Steve and I want to let you know how much we appreciate your giving your valuable time to teach other contractors how to be successful in writing their proposals.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you so much for having me back. It's always a pleasure to speak to you guys.
Absolutely. Steve, now can you fill us in on all of the exciting things that are happening at the FDBDO?
Yeah, well, I will. I will share a few things with you. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about the FDBDO. Fort Detrick Business Development Office, free service. It's available to those companies interested in competing on federal contracts, specifically those contracts that are in support of Fort Detrick. Now, we provide education and training that pertains to federal contracting, such as this webinar series on proposal writing. And I want to mention that we're building a library that we will post all of our webinars that will be free for viewing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It will include this webinar for those who are not listening to it live. It will also include the Part 1 proposal writing that Elly, which was outstanding, for the Part 1 webinar that she shared with us. And it's not on the website yet, but we're building that. And so I want everyone to know that it will be these webinars will be accessible. In addition to training, Fort Detrick Business Development Office provides market intelligence on solicitations that are released in support of Fort Detrick. Timing is very important when addressing a solicitation, so we match solicitations with the companies that are registered with the FDBDO. And registration and all of our services are free, as I mentioned, and you can register your company at our website. It's www.fdbdo.com. Also, I'd like to mention our upcoming class, next webinar class. It is a part one. It's a part one of a two-part webinar series that's on grant solicitations, and it is titled Grants 101, Understanding the Process and Finding Resources. It is scheduled for Thursday, September 29th, and you can register for that webinar today, and you can see a complete list of all webinars and events located at our website. Again, that's www.fdbdo.com.
Wonderful. And Elly's contact information is on the screen, her phone number and direct email if you would like to get in touch with her regarding questions about today's session. And, of course, always contact Steve and the folks at the FDBDO at the info@fdbdo.com email address, or you have the phone number as well, 301-620-7071. And I am Gloria Larkin, President of Target Gov. We're very happy to present these webinars to you so that you can also become more successful in selling your products and services to the U.S. federal government. It's time for us to wrap up. I want to thank everyone for your time. Elly, Steve, couldn't be done without you. Thanks very much for attending today, and we'll look forward to our next webinar coming up in September, and of course downloading all of those that will be placed on the library as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Gloria. Bye.
All righty. Goodbye.